Hello everyone, welcome back to Flutter University. In today's quick video, we'll be looking at how you can perform a simple GraphQL query in your Flutter application. So GraphQL is a query language developed by Facebook back then in 2012, quite a while ago. Facebook changed their name to Meta right now. So yeah, it was created by Meta, initially Facebook, and it was created for the sole purpose of ensuring that it can allow like the client to request like the specific data they want. So if you want to receive a specific data, you don't have to get all the other relevant data that you don't really need. So let's get started. So we'll go back to our code. I have a simple Flutter application. This is a starter application. I think most of you guys have interacted with this mobile application. It's the counter app. So I'll go through some of the dependencies I've installed first. I've installed a few dependencies. You can look at those dependencies: freeze annotation, JSON annotation, Flutter river pod, Flutter lints, build runner, freeze, and JSON serializable as developer dependencies. I'll also include Dio because we'll need to use Dio to perform the HTTP requests. So in this case, we won't really have to install any other fancy dependency which will help us. We don't really need it. So yeah, let's get started. I'll first clear out everything that's here in the main folder, in the main.dat file. Then we'll create a simple Flutter application. So starts with the main function which runs the app. Let's call it the Rick and Morty app. So to integrate GraphQL, you will need a GraphQL schema or a GraphQL playground. A GraphQL playground is basically kind of like a documentation which you can play around with. So in this case, I'll be using the Rick and Morty GraphQL schema, which we'll just go to in a second. So let me create the app. Let me call it Rick and Morty app. Let's create the Rick and Morty app. Let's return material app. Let's create a stateless consumer widget. So I'll be using Riverpod for my state management, so I'll have to create a stateless consumer widget. So in this case, I'll call it the home page, and make sure you import Riverpod. Then home, I'll use the home page. Make sure you follow the link rules. So let's go to our browser and go to rickandmortyapi.com. Just go to rickandmortyapi.com where you'll be able to receive all this data. So we'll be listing all this data that we need. Go to rickandmorty.com/GraphQL. So here it is. We have the Rick and Morty API playground. I already had a query set up. So this is a query that fetches me the characters. So if I press on play, it will list me the character. So the beauty with GraphQL is that if, for example, I remove status from here, it will only give me the data that I need. You'll see that in the results it won't return the status. So what we need is, I'll need the ID, of course, we'll need the name, the image. Do you have a description? No, we don't have the description. You can just add the status. And if I add the status, it's fetching the status. So this is the URL we'll be using. So let's go back to our code and implement this. So back to our code, let's create a provider. Let's create a provider called fetch characters provider. Which extends the state notifier. If you don't know what a state notifier is, you can go back to my previous video, just in this channel. So let's create this state. So I have a few extensions that I use personally in my development. So we have the specific extension called freezed. So this an extension created by Blacksu, and it helps me quickly generate freezed classes. So that's what I'll be using. Just go to my folder here. I'll just create the state within the providers folder and click on create new freezed class. I'll give it a name. Let's say fetch. Add JSON from JSON methods, no. So here we'll create a few states for the fetching. Let's create the initial state. Let's create the fetching state. Fetch state. And finally the failed state. So the failed state will basically handle the case where the API is not working as expected. This will return an error, of course. So for now you're seeing errors right here, but we'll fix that by running the following command. So Flutter pub run build runner build. So this is where the build runner package that we installed earlier comes in handy. So as it's generating the code for this, you'll see that the errors have disappeared. In a fetch characters provider, we can give it a type which is fetch character state. Let's create models for the characters. Let's create a new freeze class. This time let's call it character model, and this time we'll pick the yes option when we're asked whether to add the JSON and from JSON methods. This will allow us to serialize JSON. So yes. So let's go back to our browser and see. We have the ID, name, image, and status, which are all strings. So we'll just define them like that. Let's make them nullable. Then we'll run the same command, the same build runner command that we did earlier. So it will also generate the code for serializing that, the JSON and everything. And in our fetch character state, we'll have to have a list of characters. let's import this, run the build runner command again, so that it creates the new models, the new classes with this. Then we'll have to define our constructor call to super, create a method called fetch. Let the method be an asynchronous method. Before we have to notify every listener that we are trying to fetch data, so that it can wait. So let's set the state to be fetching state, and let's do a try catch. Since we'll be using dir for state management, we can also catch the dir error state. We don't have dir installed. Let's see. Let's install dir. I think I had a problem right there. Yes. So here on dir error, so it's telling us that dir error is depreciated. Let's look at the documentation and see. Exception. And dir exception. I think it's been changed to dir exception. Let's set the state to be the error message, and then the default catch. To be, let's give it a generic error. So let's create a local variable and assign it to the value of the awaited response that we'll be getting. So in a nutshell, GraphQL methods or GraphQL requests are normally called as normal post request. So in this case, we will call dir.post. The URL will go back to our GraphQL playground for the Rick and Morty API. Let's copy that URL. We need to post some data. So for the data, let's create a map. Let's create a key called query, and let's stringify that response. Let's just go back to our playground and copy everything you have here. This is what we'll be using to fetch. Just paste it right there. Let's style it a little bit. And that's the data. So looking at how the data looks like, we have the results. We need to list these results, so this is what we need. Let's go back to our code, but make sure you look at how this response looks like. So it's data, the key value is data, characters, then result. So let's create a new variable, list of type dynamic. No, we're not supposed to paste it there. Let's just call it response data equals response data. Since the response is a map, let's get this data, characters, then results. Data, characters, results. If you haven't understood what really happened here, we're basically calling this result, the value of this result, by using the key value. You can read about maps in that. And then state equals to fetched state, not failed, fetched state. For the characters we'll have to generate, so response data, map, character from JSON, then cast that to list. And just like that, guys, we've managed to do a simple GraphQL query with Dio. And you've noticed that we haven't had to call like https:/API/characters so that we can fetch the characters. We only had to pass this URL and give the query like the specific thing we need, and it will return to us what we really need as defined in this specification right here. So for the fun part, let's go, or for the boring part, depending on what you like, go to our homepage and start defining stuff. So we can, did we define a global variable for a provider? No, we need to define a global variable, a global state notifier provider for our provider. Final which equals set notifier provider, which returns fetch characters provider, whose initial state is in the constructor. Also within the constructor, let's make sure that we call the fetch so that it will fetch the characters immediately we start the app. Immediately maybe the provider is called. So let's give it some types right here. Like that. So far so good. Let me know if you have any questions. Write your questions in the comments. Also, if you like the video, please share with your friends and they might learn a thing or two. Yeah. So in our build method for our homepage, we'll have to return, let me first return a container. Let's run the app and do the changes as we see. So yeah, if you like the video, please share it to your friends. Let me know if you want to learn anything else in Flutter. You can just drop it out in the comments, or you can reach out to my personal Twitter or any social media handle. I'll link them below, or you can just find them around anywhere, and yeah, I'll be able to respond to you in whichever best way I can. Yeah. Also, let me know how you feel about this new camera feeding with the video. Let me know if you like it or not. Yeah, so the app has run successfully. So in our container, let's first return a scaffold whose outbound let's say like that. And then for the body we'll use this, where we now using the providers we created earlier. So let's just use ref.watch. If you're using Flutter block, you can use context.watch or context.read, depending on whichever you need. So ref.watch in Riverpod allows us to have basically returns the value posted by the provider and rebuild the widget when that value changes. So it's basically constantly listening to that, and if anything changes, it will rebuild the widget and display the correct state. So we'll have to call the global provider created. The default state, let's just return a container. Container, I mean. Then in our fetched state, return list view whose children are our characters. Cast that to list, then return list. Title, let's say character.name. Of course, you have to wrap it in a text widget. For the leading, let's use image. Like that. Let's give it a size height of 100 and a box fit of cover. Box fit cover. And the subtitle, status. And just like that, my friends, we ran into an error, so no provider scope found. So in Riverpod, you have to wrap everything under provider scope so that it can be able to access all these providers. So let's wrap our app inside the provider scope. So it's basically an equivalent to wrapping your app in the block providers and multi-block providers if you're using block or provider, multi-provider and that kind of stuff. Let's start the application. So it's listing the characters successfully. As you can see, they're looking very nice, but we haven't seen the loading state. It hasn't notified us that it's fetching. So to fix that, let's go back to our code and define the fetching state. Find the fetch state, fetching. Here let's return a center. Whose child is a circular progress indicator. Let me put the const here. And let's restart the application. And now you can see that we're able to fetch our characters. And it will give us the list of, it will show us that it's loading and that kind of stuff. So thank you guys for watching the video. Share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.